that screen right there is Air Force One. President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden arriving in Colorado, and they will spend most of the afternoon here visiting with families affected by the Marshall Fire.
That's right. It's always such a grand event when Air Force One lands. It's the most famous plane in the world, obviously, but today just very sad circumstances that brings the first family to Colorado. They are going to meet with Governor Polis and Congressman Neguse and take a tour of some of the burn areas, specifically in Louisville. And also, while they're here, they're going to meet with some of the families who have been affected. So many families affected by this devastating fire. And as you know, last week, in fact, immediately after Thursday's fire, the president did declare this a major disaster, therefore freeing up some federal money to help these folks who need it so badly with temporary housing, with fixing up their homes.
And that will be part of the conversation today as the president spends a few hours here in Colorado, specifically with Congressman Neguse, who has also worked on some legislation to deal with wildfire and wildfire situations. But I think the most poignant part of this visit really is to have those conversations with families and to understand what they have gone through and to even fathom, I think, for anybody that this was such a horrific Colorado event, that to lose 1,084 homes in just a matter of hours, the unthinkable has happened. And I think just to have his presence here will be comforting to some degree to those families who have such a long road ahead.
Well, you know, and Congressman Neguse was among the Neguse family, or among those who had to evacuate on Thursday. We talked to him that night. I think he was I can't remember. I think he was just visiting different rec centers that were housing people at the time. But their house was spared. But you know, they didn't know for a while. So I mean, that brings it home, I'm sure, for President Biden and also for the other officials that, yeah, these are real people, and a lot of them that this happened to.
And you know, one other quick note we should mention today, we knew that there were 2 people missing from the fire, and they have just identified the remains that were found earlier this week, and those remains belong to Robert Sharp, a 69-year-old, and those partial remains, I should say, were found on Marshall Road. So some very sad news today, but again, they've identified that person as 69-year-old Robert Sharp.
So kind of a quick outline of the first family's plans here as Air Force One taxis to a stop. They are going to not going to be in Colorado long, 4 hours tops. At least that's the plan right now. They're scheduled to get onto Marine One, their helicopter, and fly to the Broomfield Airport there, Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. So I guess the good news for all of you on the roads, hopefully they won't be tying up the roads too much, but the trip will be quick. Fly up to Boulder County, tour the area, and see for himself just the devastation that we experienced here just a week ago, and then meet with some of those families privately. In fact, that's a closed meeting. That's not going to be for the press, I believe.
And then they will move on to Las Vegas after that. All right, we have several crews out covering the president's visit today, so let's go out to Megan Lopez, who is there at DIA, where Air Force One has just come to a stop. Megan?
Hey there, Ann and Shannon. Yeah, you can see Air Force One behind me. They're getting ready to unload the president. Over here on my right shoulder, there is Marine One, and there's 4 Ospreys. Those are those really big helicopters that tend to go with Marine One for safety measures. So they are all ready to go. We also saw just a little bit ago Governor Polis pull up in a car, so he's ready to go with the president. You talked about the president and the First Lady being here, and Congressman Neguse, who's worked so much on wildfire legislation well before what we saw play out in Boulder, and he's been working on this, so he will join them. But we also know that Senator Michael Bennet, Senator John Hickenlooper, they will join the president as well. I was also speaking with State Senator Leroy Garcia. He's the Senate president, and he told me that he's going to take part in those tours as well. So it just shows you the massive response from a federal and from a state and from a local level. Obviously, the message that's coming here from the president is really one of making sure that people understand that they're not only going to be emotionally supported, but they're going to be financially supported. Unfortunately, President Biden is getting really good at doing these disaster tours. Since he took office last year, he's already done several. He visited the Gulf Coast, he visited New York, And last month, he visited Kentucky. Now, Kentucky's one was interesting because in that, what he had said was that he was going to actually go beyond the federal disaster declaration for Kentucky, and he was going to have the federal government cover all of the debris removal, all of the overtime expenses for emergency personnel, for police officers for the next 30 days. So what we're really going to be listening for when he gives this speech this afternoon, after meeting with the families, after taking that tour, is whether he's going to go beyond that federal disaster declaration that's already been issued for Colorado. I talked about the fact that Colorado has seen a lot of these disasters as well. I mean, we've had our own share of disaster declarations federally. In March 2020, obviously, we had COVID as a disaster declaration that was done by President Trump. Also, last year, we had President Trump approve a major disaster declaration for the East Troublesome Fire. So, unfortunately, Colorado is also getting really good at being able to handle and have all of this federal help come in for these major disasters. We also saw Governor Polis ask President Biden at the time for disaster help federally for the Glenwood Canyon fire. So we're just getting really good at, unfortunately, at handling these FEMA money, this federal help, and really trying to coordinate it. And that's really what you're going to want to pay attention to, you know, as we're watching all of this. Now, what you're seeing right now is people starting to get out of the plane. And if I can kind of give you guys a lay of the ground right now, there is a lot, as always. The last time President Biden was here was in September. That was for a much happier occasion when he was visiting the National Renewable Energy Lab. And so what happens here is always just a really tight clampdown of security, a lot of personnel, a lot of coordination in order to make this happen, even with these short visits like this. So, I mean, there are police officers, security all over the place, making sure that the president and the first lady stay safe. We're going to see Governor Polis here in just a little bit meeting with the president. But obviously, I mean, this is a huge coordinated effort. The president, as you guys said, is going to be getting on Marine One here, going to Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. He's going to take a tour of a neighborhood in Louisville that was destroyed, obviously, by that Marshall Fire. He's going to make a speech. He's going to meet with families, and then he's going to leave tonight, where he's leaving from here from DIA. He's going to be heading to Las Vegas to attend the funeral tomorrow for Harry Reid. So let's talk a little bit more about that federal disaster declaration that we already have and what we're waiting to see if the president decides to add a little bit more on. What it does at this point is it gives assistance that can include grants for temporary housing and home repairs, low-cost loans to cover uninsured property losses. There's federal funding that's also available to the state and to local governments, to nonprofit organizations for cost sharing based on the emergency work that they're obviously going to be performing in the days, in the weeks, in the months after this. And there's going to be federal funding available for cost sharing for that hazard material mitigation. That's some of the debris that needs to be removed, obviously, from the area before we can even really begin to consider reconstructing parts of this area. So those are some of the things that disaster declaration already does. Now, we're talking about 991 homes destroyed, another 200 damaged. We're talking about businesses, 6,000 acres that were burned, right? And so what we saw earlier this week, well before the president came here, was what the state was going to do. So you had Governor Polis meet with his administration, and they gave a press conference on Wednesday where they walked us through some of those state efforts that include tax relief for people that are affected by the fire. They included setting up a crisis counseling program to meet with people's mental health needs. That's something that's a really interesting kind of part of this, because I spoke with people, you know, a year later after the East Troublesome Fire, talking to them about this Marshall Fire, and a lot of them said, you know, they're still going through mental health troubles. And so they were appreciative of the fact that that the governor, that the state is really offering that type of help to make sure that it's not just financial help. Like, yes, the materials matter, the things in your home matter, the memories in your home matter, but you know what also matters is your mental health. And these are people that lost pets. There's, as you mentioned, 2 people, unfortunately, that lost their lives. So there is going to be a really long mental health recovery effort that we really need to take into account. That's something that the governor wanted to make sure that people knew, that there is a mental health crisis hotline. Now let's talk about what else the state did. Along with that crisis counseling program, there's unemployment assistance programs. We told you some of the businesses were destroyed. That had to go through the federal government. You have until, I believe it's February 2nd, to go ahead and to apply for that. But that's something that they wanted to make sure in a year where we're dealing with so many people looking for jobs, so many businesses looking for employees. Now you had a fire, you had people that lost their jobs, you had people that lost their livelihoods. And the interesting kind of part of that was that it's not only going to apply to those businesses, but to self-employed people, maybe people who were working from home, who needed their homes in order to be able to complete their jobs. Those home offices, they're also going to be able to apply for that federal and state unemployment assistance. So that's something that's really important. Now, one more thing that the state did was they set up a task force. And that task force is going to assess the immediate and the long-term housing needs for people that were affected by that fire. I mean, this is a really interesting time what we're talking about. And something that I talked to people from the East Troublesome fire is that they're still trying to find the construction materials, they're still trying to find the labor, and they're still competing with a very booming housing market here in Colorado and across the country in order to be able to rebuild their own homes. Jump forward to the Marshall Fire. Now you have 991 homes that were destroyed. That means 991 more families that are going to be looking for a place to live. They're going to be looking for federal funding. They're going to be looking for their insurance companies to help them out, and they're going to be competing not only for that labor, but for the construction materials to make sure that they can rebuild their homes. So that's something that the state says it's going to form this task force for, to really make sure that they can answer those needs. I asked Governor Polis at that Wednesday press conference really, what he can do in terms of his business connections to try to make sure that people have the funding and the help that they need to be able to compete for those labor materials, the construction, things like that. And he said he is going to be looking into that. We did see him, if you might remember, like last year, we did see him use his business ties in a really interesting, unique way with COVID in order to try to obtain more masks and more testing materials. This was really early on in the pandemic. So we have seen him flex his entrepreneurial, his business ties. He comes from a business background. So we have seen him do that in the past. And we'll have to see if he does that once again, today and as we kind of go through these recovery efforts. But once again, taking a live look at Air Force One and just all of the different personnel, all of the different coordination that has to happen here. And really what you're going to be hearing, guys, is a message from President Biden that he's behind Colorado and that he understands and can really support the state. And again, unfortunately, we're just getting really good at these disasters and handling all of this federal money, given all the things that we've seen really in the past year or so.
Megan Lopez, thank you for all that. And Megan's out there live as we await President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden to exit Air Force One. I believe Governor Polis is there at the foot of the stairs waiting to greet him. And we'll join him on the tour. And we have a large crew out covering the president's tour today, which he's only going to be in Colorado for about 4 hours right now. Tony Kovaleski is up in Boulder County, I guess Broomfield specifically,
County, yes.
Broomfield County, where Marine One will land. Tony?
Yeah, good afternoon, Shannon and Nan. We are here at Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport awaiting the president to land here at Marine One. Over our shoulder, we should be able to watch him take off from DIA, make their way here. We suspect the president will probably take a flyover of the burned area before arriving here at the regional airport. He's got his entire team waiting here. We've seen a large presence of law enforcement, Jefferson County Sheriff's SWAT team, and we now know that the president is off the plane. So I'm going to just let you know we'll be here all afternoon following the president as he arrives and takes off.
Right,
we'll
Tony,
have those reports throughout the evening.
Thank you very much. So again, the president and Dr. Jill Biden both just walking off the plane and meeting with Governor Polis and Lieutenant Governor Primavera. I can't tell who the other person is who they are shaking hands with at this moment, but we were talking about Governor Polis earlier, who has ties to Boulder County, as does Congressman Joe Neguse, who now is just walking off the plane along with Jason Crow. So quite the Colorado contingency on there. John Hickenlooper as well. And I suspect Senator Michael Bennet as well. So the Colorado contingency making its way to Colorado today to have the opportunity to see firsthand this utter devastation that no one could have fathomed for our state of Colorado, and to see what those collective minds can do as they come together and figure out how to transition this county that is, and we haven't even talked about COVID, just all of the issues that this county has gone through in the last week and the last year, and to try and recover it. It's
something you brought up earlier. More than anything, this is symbolic, I think, for how seriously the federal government is taking this horrible disaster in Boulder County. That it would bring in the president and at least our Democratic congressional delegation all to fly in on this this beautiful plane to show the people there that, you know, we're paying attention and money is coming and help is coming. You know, we've met so many people, Ann, over this last week, individuals whose lives are just completely upended, whose lives will never, ever, ever be the same. And there are hundreds and hundreds of them. And so now this is you know, a big show of support for those people. Yeah.
You know, and it reminds me of two people who we introduced to our Denver 7 viewers this week. The Cullen family, a family we took shopping. Jacqueline
Right.
Allen took them shopping because they left their house. They had those 3 kids, 2 of them toddlers. They actually had to leave their house without the car seats. They had no shoes on.
That's right.
And we were able to take them shopping just to get some immediate needs. And we will follow up with them and do more with them. Also, Joseph and Cindy, another couple who retired in the Louisville area. And they figured out that their house was not properly insured at the proper level. So
Like there were 300,000 short, something like
Yes.
that. Incredible. And some of the money that Megan was talking about will help some of the uninsured properties. So maybe there's access now for that family we met through some of that help. As the first family and congressional delegation make their way over to Marine One, they'll take the very short flight over to Broomfield and begin the tour there.
And there will be a motorcade at various points of this tour. So let's go to Jason Luber right now, who is going to lay out this whole traffic pattern for us.
Yeah, and it could be less impactful for us as we're watching the president get into Marine One right now. And it will be less impactful because we're not going to be closing down E470. We're not going to be closing down I-70 or I-25. And that's going to help us out tremendously, at least in the traffic regard. So what the president is going to do is fly on that Marine One over to Rocky Mountain Metro Airport right off of Wadsworth and Highway 36. And then what he's going to do is go from there. And if you can see here on the map, this is where the Highway 36 meets Wadsworth, and this is Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. He's scheduled to arrive there about 3 o'clock here in just a little bit. Now, I've already had some traffic spotters tell me they have seen police officers, and it looks like they're already going to close down. This is my best guess from this morning, that they're going to use McCaslin. They're going to actually drive on McCaslin and use those roads to go through the neighborhoods, through Rock Creek, and tour these neighborhoods after he already tours it from the air. That's where he's going to tour it on the ground. He's also going to then tour the areas, the neighborhoods just on the north side of Highway 36 before he gets over here to the Louisville Recreation and Senior Center. He's supposed to meet with the families and also has some remarks there at about 4:30 or so. Of course, that schedule is dependent on his schedule and how he goes through this tour. Then the question for big time traffic is going to be, and I just received a message from Boulder Police that says they are going to use Highway 36. My guess this morning was they are going to use Highway 36 from McCaslin and run east back over to Wadsworth, and that means Highway 36 will be closed from about 5:30 or so until about 6 o'clock. And that will obviously be a major impact to traffic. So the folks that want to get from Boulder back towards Denver, South Boulder Road, Arapahoe, maybe even use the diagonal up to Longmont and then run 119 over to I-25 and then head south. And then he's going to get back over to here to Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. And once the presidential motorcade gets back to Rocky Mountain Metro Airport, Highway 36 will open and those traffic impacts will be much, much lessened. We will then have the president fly from here just after about 6 o'clock back over to DIA. And again, at that point, all the roads should reopen except for the roads in the fire zone and in the neighborhoods that are already still closed. So we'll have restrictions, obviously. It won't be as impactful across McCaslin because there are very few people up there anyway. But Highway 36, when that does close, we are going to see, obviously, a major traffic jam when that happens.
Yeah. All right, Jason, we're
Shannon,
glad you're on that.
And back to you.
All right, thanks
Thank you.
very much. All right, as the rotors get up to speed here on Marine One, the president and first lady will make the very short trip up to Broomfield and begin their proper tour, and they're scheduled to fly on to Las Vegas in just about 4 hours, so it won't be long. But I do want to, first of all, say thank you for all of your generous donations to help these people who have been affected. And we have a new grand total today. It's just incredible.
And what Shannon's talking about is our wildfire relief fund, where so many of you have given over and over again, and we thank you so much. In fact, you can see the image to scan there. So far, we have raised nearly $500,000. It's right at about
In a
$480,000
week.
to our Denver 7 Gives Fund. We've started giving out some of that money incrementally just because we know that this is a long-term thing. We can't just hand it all out immediately because we know that people need immediate things today. Maybe it's just food today. Maybe it's rent or housing next month. So we've started to hand it out and bringing joy to little kids' faces by handing off a sweet little stuffed animal. So thank you to all of you. We promise this is staying in Colorado, helping these families specifically because that's what you've asked of us. That's what we will do for you.
So we'll keep raising this money and we will keep happily giving it out to all these people who need it. And we sure would appreciate it if you keep on giving, as so many of you have so generously done already. All right, Air Force One now obstructing the view of Marine One as it takes off. We're going to, we'll be covering this throughout the day. You can certainly tune back in at for Denver 7 News at 5 and 6. We'll have a complete report of the president's activities today. But what a sad day to have to bring the president here. And
it truly is, and let's hope that his arrival and the others brings some comfort to those families who they meet with this afternoon. Again, just housekeeping, just be aware that US 36, there will be traffic issues between now and 6:30 p.m. Closed temporarily at different times according to the Boulder Police Department. So just be aware of that as we watch the president's visit today. And we'll be on and off the air bringing you updated information right here and on our website as well.
that's all right. All right, so thanks very much for staying with us. We'll get back to regular programming shortly, and Ann and I will be here monitoring this all afternoon long.
Tony, get out of the way.
And he's going to be the president. So we have rec center after that. Thank you. I know. Yeah, that's for sure. But we got it. They're going to come down here and stage. Don't stress out, but you're just protecting the leader of the free world.